Hi, my name is Chris Liddle, and I am the host of The Lifestyle Chase. In 2018, I started this show to have meaningful conversations. I've interviewed over 100 different people, both in and out of the fitness industry. This podcast is something I'm incredibly proud of. Welcome to Season 4. Thanks for joining me.
All right, so welcome back to the Lifestyle Chase podcast. This year has been a bit slower for podcast episode releases. And throughout this episode, I'm going to explain why, like what exactly has been happening throughout the course of 2022. There's been a lot of new things that have popped up, a lot of self-awareness, and a lot of opportunities. When I was about this time in 2021, I was having to work quite hard to find different solutions in my own career, and I wouldn't have been able to predict where I'd be now if you had asked me back then. There was definitely times when I thought that maybe I would be phasing out of the fitness industry, which feels weird to say because I'm in a very strong position in the fitness industry now, but it's something that I'm grateful for. So if you're listening to this episode, that signifies to me that you are quite the supportive person. And for that, I appreciate you greatly. I would love to hear from you if you are actually one of the people who regularly listens. There's a lot of times when I am not quite sure. I know that my parents will let me know if they tune into an episode. And aside from that, I'm fairly in the dark on these things. One thing that I want to talk about before I get too far into the episode is I'm currently doing a 100-day, 4-mile-a-day air bike challenge. So I actually have an Echo bike made by Rogue that's in my living room. So if you're not familiar with an air bike or an Echo bike or a assault bike, essentially the front tire isn't a tire, it's a fan. So every rotation of the pedal is resistance by fan. So it makes for quite the challenging endeavor. The purpose of a 100-day challenge, I've done this in the past with push-ups. I've participated in long challenges with squats. For me, the reason that I make it such a long challenge is to instill in people playing the long game and being patient, understanding that there are ups and there's downs, but if you keep going and be consistent, that it pays off. And I do this to try and make achieving your goals more realistic for people, because for myself, you're seeing me now reflect on 2022 as it stands today, and we're at a point where I have collected a lot of wins, and that's great. But in order to get to this point, I also had to be very resilient through a lot of losses. And you'll be able to kind of pick up on that through past episodes and the topics that I've discussed and the things that I've shared. But just know that this applies to just about everybody that you will meet. And I've had the pleasure of chatting with all kinds of people over food and just in my random encounters where they might be very successful business people, but it doesn't mean that the entire journey went without struggle or that it didn't lack effort. There's a lot of instances when we find ourselves seeing someone at their peak, and we think that just because they're showing us a snapshot of success, that it must have been handed to them. And quite often we're not willing to sit down and listen to that person's story. And the opportunity that I've had is when I see someone who is doing amazing things, I put time aside to understand how did they get there. And for some people that I have spoken to, it was simply a matter of being very passionate about a hobby that they had, whether it be racing cars or collecting car parts, and then finding a way to finance that hobby through opportunity, whether that be going to the auction, buying a vehicle, and then selling the parts individually. It's a very legal thing to do. It's something that all of us have the ability to kind of get our feet wet with. And this person had the initiative to do that first step. It's not too different than doing like a 10,000 step per day challenge, or maybe it's a 10-kilometer bike challenge, or whatever works for the person that's taking on that challenge. When you don't do anything, then you can't expect the result. Like, how can you expect for something amazing to happen if you skipped the first steps? And so my goal for this episode is to kind of catch everybody up to speed, but also kind of give you some clues or some opportunities in which you can take initiative in whatever situation that you find yourself in. So, to recap, when I started in the fitness industry, it was like 2017 to 2018. Um, several local places weren't prepared to take me on. They weren't prepared to hire me as a new trainer, or hire me to fold towels, or hire me to teach group fitness. There was a lot of doors that didn't open, and rightfully so, because I was new. And so when we reflect on what I'm going to share with you about 2022, and then look back to that, understand that if I didn't show effort and dedication and resilience, I wouldn't have gotten anywhere. And it's not like I had opportunities handed it to me, but just like we'll see in successful business owners, oftentimes when you see that snapshot of success, it gets very easy to get angry or resentful or play blame games. And I think this is just a pattern that comes up a lot in society as a whole. So hopefully the takeaway that you get in that statement is that when you see someone that is doing well for a snapshot of time, be very open and give them space to explain maybe what might have not gone well along the journey, or what they may have done that paid off for them. And that's kind of what I'm going to be doing here. So as time went on, the very first gym that I was at as an employee actually closed 8 months in. So that kind of forced me into self-employment. So leading up into the pandemic, I still hadn't felt like I had really hit my stride. And so when gyms started to close and I lost a lot of in-person clients, that really that was tough. That was really tough. But I was able to be agile in that situation because that had been how I had had to be since I started in the industry. And that is a common trait that you will find with a lot of people outside of fitness, whether it be that they own like a pizza business, or maybe they own a auto body business, any business under the sun. It's these characteristics and this willingness to keep going and to do what they can do under the circumstances. Examples of ways that I was able to float by while gyms were closed was I was mowing lawn, I was chopping wood, I was selling trees, I was moving people. And a lot of these were cash deals for friends and family, but that is what I had the control to do. And so that's what I was willing to do. And I think it was that day to day initiative and willingness to do what was legal for me to do that paid off for me as time went on. So if we go back to about this time in 2021, I was actively looking for additional employment to kind of fill out my day. Gyms were kind of open and close. People were skeptical about coming back to training in person. And so I, in reality, had to come up with a solution in order to set myself up, because as we're seeing the situation unfold with inflation and changing of the economy, there's only so much that is going to happen for us until we have to take the initiative to just control what we can control. I know it's a cliche statement that gets said often, but nobody's coming to save you. If you don't set yourself up to have that compound effect of consistent effort over time, you will simply sabotage yourself. And at that point, there's not much else that people can do. So the efforts that you make are necessary. So for a matter of like probably 4 months straight, I was writing resumes for different roles to fill out this maybe 20 to 30 block of time that I had per week. And tons of businesses weren't getting back to me. There's one local business that I was really passionate about, and it was a long process, and then they ended up going in a different direction. And again, respectfully so, I think that's the nature of the beast. When you're looking to better yourself, you have to be open to the fact that you're not the only one going in that direction, and that the direction that you go in might not be the one that you expect, but it might still be in alignment with you. And then so as time went on, I kind of had sort of this realization that wouldn't it be neat to sort of like get a fresh start, for myself being like a single bachelor for the bulk of my time in the fitness industry. I've been a bit of a lone wolf. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool to move and go to Banff or Canmore? And it seemed like something like I was like, I could make this work. I just got to get all my ducks in a row, find a renter, um, find some accommodations. And so I was in the Facebook groups. I was talking to people. I was applying for jobs in Banff or Canmore. And I actually applied for a role at the Lululemon in Banff. And when it got to the time that I was doing the interview, then I actually realized that I was like, this isn't logistically, this isn't going to work. If anybody's familiar with like the housing situation in Banff and Canmore, it's not very easy or straightforward in the sense that they have more people than they have accommodations, and the cost of living is just not realistic for someone who's just barely scraping by. And then to find a renter in Edmonton on top of that to fill the vacancy with my condo would just be a headache. And so on the call for the interview, I opted to put my name in the hat for an Edmonton location instead. And so for about 5 or 6 months, I was on contract with an Edmonton Lululemon location, promoting Lululemon Mirror. And that was a really cool moment for me because I got to be surrounded by some wonderful souls, some beautiful people. It had its new lessons and its challenges, but it was also a great environment to be in, to kind of sort of rekindle interconnectedness amidst all that time when so many people were so isolated. So I really enjoyed that. And as time went on, I started to pick up momentum with the other things that I do. So for anybody that may not know, throughout my entire time as a trainer, I've done a little bit of contracting for social media. And as time went on, I started to add videography to the mix. And so my workload for that started to increase throughout the years. So throughout 2020, 2021, 2022, it's just steadily increased as I've been able to invest in my skills, getting new cameras, getting new software, stuff like that. And from 2021 onward, I've been an online coach for my friend Alex McBrarty at A-Team Fitness. So some people listening might actually be my client with A-Team Fitness. It's the same service that I offer to people locally online, just under Alex's umbrella. So we train people internationally. It's a very tight-knit community. We have a lot of resources to help people out, and it's like we're supporting them the whole way through. And so that's a role that I have done that has evolved and grown over time. And as we were going into 2022, I started to find I was getting busier and busier. I was renewing every client that I got assigned, and momentum was picking up, but I wasn't quite to the point where I was like ready to make that leap from the Lululemon role. My contract with them did get extended, which I was extremely grateful for. But I got to that point where I was ready to take a risk on myself. And I had been talking to one of my friends and colleagues in the industry about another role that I had qualities that helped to serve. And so this other role is what I am also doing currently today. And that is I am a creative director with Beverly Simpson Fitness. So that is based out of New York. And I have helped her with her podcast since about end of April. And so right about the time that I put in my notice with Lululemon and departed, I actually happened to line up this work with my friend Beverly. And it worked really well because the biggest aspect of her business, which I have been helping her with, is making sure that her podcast guests are all set up for success. Sometimes I'm the one arranging them. We go through all of the material in each episode. It's really fun to be able to kind of review the episodes for me because I'm someone who really enjoys the connection and the talking to people and learning from people. And so I've been able to do that vicariously through my colleagues. I also helped my friend Alex McBrarty with his show, and that's the A-Team Fitness Podcast. So he has been interviewing some of his clients, and so I help him with editing and producing that show. So that has kind of been where I've been at behind the scenes, helping to edit and produce 2 podcasts aside from my own, and also consulting with a lot of up and coming podcasts. There will be some upcoming opportunities in the future for people looking to start podcasts. But if you have ever wondered about starting your podcast, and if you're thinking about hiring me for a consultation call, feel free to reach out to me either through social media or through my email, chris@invigoratetraining.com. And that is definitely something that I offer, especially as time goes on and it becomes more and more of my specialty. You're not going to find too many trainers out there that are actually producing multiple podcasts. And so because it's something that I actually have experience with, I bring a lot of value when I do that. As time has gone on, I've also been able to fill up my roster at the gym in person. So if you happen to be looking for in-person training, that is something that I still do in Edmonton. So I'm based out of Evolve Strength South. I am looking to fill a few vacant spots at 6:30, 7:30, 8:30, 9:30. And so if those are times that work for you, that is wonderful. And if you were looking for alternate times, I can accommodate here and there, but I'm generally trying to fill up the mornings because I do have a lot of other commitments that I tend to book later in the day. Morning is basically when I'm my most enthusiastic, but I do accommodate for the occasional midday session and the occasional evening session here and there. So if you are ever thinking that you'd want to train with me, either remotely or in person, always send me a message, reach out, ask me if I have some capacity to take on someone, because I'd rather have that conversation where we chat about it and I can say what I have to offer and I can tell you the pricing. I'd rather have had that conversation than to put it off for years, because if I look back and think about the time when I decided to get started with everything that I've done over the years, if I had delayed it by a year or two, I would feel so silly. And I reflect back and think on, like, if I had just quit on my fitness career a year ago, I would also feel silly. So what I'm hoping that you get from this episode is just a little bit of an explanation as to where I have been the last few months. I have full intentions of bringing guests back to the show, just kind of taking my time and sort of planning out future episodes, deciding what conversations I want to have, what direction that I want to take on things, and not overthinking it. The amount of personal growth that I've gotten from hosting this show over the years is incredible. You'll be able to reflect and see just how I present has changed and how my network has grown, and my being able to connect with like-minded people in the industry has definitely served me well. It's made 2022 one of the most successful years of my career as a whole, including non-fitness industry jobs, which is a pretty big flex for me. So with that said, if you're thinking to yourself, how can I be part of this momentum? There's a little bit of homework that I have for you. So right now, my podcast is hosted on a platform called Substack. That doesn't impact where you listen to it. You can still listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you typically find your audio podcasts. But Substack is actually a platform for writers, and you can actually subscribe to get notified by email anytime I put out anything. So whether that be my newsletter, which I put out periodically, including some of the guest appearances that I've made, which I made a few this past year, or if I ever do a release or any kind of insider info, you can get that by going to chrisliddle.substack.com. It'll also be in the episode description. Another way that you can help me out is if you listen to this episode and you get value from it, if you tag me at Christian Liddle in your story on Instagram, I can actually repost that. And it just gives a little bit more street cred to the episode to just kind of show that there are actual real life human beings listening to it. It's something that I greatly appreciate. It helps me connect with the actual human beings that are out there. Next thing on the agenda here for ways that you can help out the show is Spotify allows you to actually select 5 stars. Now, I'm not going to mention the other stars because those are nonsense, but if you feel so inclined, select that 5 stars and you can subscribe directly through the Spotify platform. And that's in addition to your ability to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. When you leave a review or you leave the 5 stars, it actually gives the show a little bit of a nudge in the rankings and helps me get exposure to people who have no idea who I am. And I like to think that if I was to meet a stranger and they got to know me, that it would be worth them having gotten to know me. So the goal here is for you to help me get to know more people and just get a little bit more traction with this project of mine, this podcast that is several years old and has contributed greatly to my career and the connections that I've made and the people I've gotten to meet. One of my missions for the next few years is to start traveling and connecting in person with some of my podcast guests that don't live in the local area. So stay tuned for that because I really do intend to follow through with that. It could be as soon as something like September. So that is going to be one of the projects that I'm going to be working on. And in the meantime, I wanted to keep this episode as short and concise as possible. Just know that the podcast is still rolling. If you happen to tune in, send me a message. And I just hope that you're having a good day. I hope that this lights a little bit of fire for you to take a little bit of initiative, to not quit, to keep going, and to take the necessary steps to get some momentum for yourself and make a leap if you have to. But with all that being said, we're going to let you go for the day. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you for the next one.